question. And that is a tough one. And again, I would say my same answer is really preparation. And when people first start scripting, I say, just write it out. No grammar, no nothing. Just write the whole thing out and don't worry about it. And then I go in and I teach them how to edit it down. And when you're going on stage, so like writing a book and speaking a speech are two very different forms of writing. When you're speaking on stage, you want to be direct, you want to be the expert, you want to be clear, and you need short sentences, then you need powerful sentences. When you're, writing a book, you want all the details, you want it to be fluffy, you want people to be encapsulated by the imagery. But when you're on stage, you want people to be encapsulated in the emotion you're bringing to the stage. And so again, it's all about preparation. It's all about being comfortable with your material and being willing to be seen, letting people see who you are, and just open your heart and open up to the possibility of how you could change someone's life with whatever you're saying. So there's an openness there that you have to be okay with screwing up and not saying the right thing. There's a whole sense of surrender and letting go and speaking that you have to allow yourself to just be yourself instead of sounding scripted. There's a whole process.
Welcome to the podcast. So glad to have everyone here today with us. And I have Meagan O'Nan with me. Meagan is here to talk about her story, and she loves crafting a good story. And there's some great insight and things that we're going to talk about today. Super excited to have you on, Meagan. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to, having this conversation. We met a few weeks ago, and I was like, I can't wait to talk to Dave again. So I really enjoyed our conversation before.
Well, you just made my heart happy. So thank you for that. So tell everybody, I think you're in Mississippi, right?
That's right. Yep, I am.
Tell me, again, we talked about this, but what is amazing about Mississippi? If anybody hasn't been there like me, I haven't been there yet. What should I see? What should I do? What's exciting about your home?
I would say first, the people. I think a lot of people, when they think of Mississippi, that's probably not the first thing they would think of that I would answer, especially as a gay woman from Mississippi who had a really tough coming out experience. But the people here are resilient and they're willing to have conversations. They're willing to open their hearts. They're willing to help people out. And I have just found the depth of their hearts through my experiences. And so first I would say the people. Second is the land is absolutely gorgeous here. It's green. It's lush. It's just beautiful here. I mean, people come here and they're like, wow, it is just gorgeous all the time. So and we get 4 seasons, which is wonderful. So those two things are really the things that stick out the most. We live on 7 acres and absolutely love it to death. Beautiful.
And it's a great place to spell, right? I love that. I remember growing up in school, like M-I-S-S-I, S-S-I-P-P-I. It's so funny. It's like ingrained in my head. That's how you spell it. So we have, in Canada here in Ontario, we have Mississauga. So it's similar. So we get to do the M-I-S-S. Anyway, I always love Mississippi. I just love that. That sounds like fun. I actually met somebody recently from Mississippi after speaking with you. They're a comedian in Mississippi, and they do comedy clubs and stuff. And I'm like, this is so cool. I got somebody to introduce you to. You should meet Meagan. So it's amazing who we can connect with. Love to. Yeah, it's amazing who we can connect with. So a little bit about your background. I'm seeing on your website you up there on stage sharing, speaking, and creating and crafting a story. Tell me about your experiences leading to you speaking on stage and helping people craft a good story. I'm really curious about that path to got you to that stage.
It's kind of been a journey. It's one of those things that kind of found me as I grew up. I grew up this very curious kid and very interested in spirituality, definitely a writer at heart. I grew up in a home where we didn't really talk about our feelings. We didn't communicate on that level. And so I ran to my pen and paper to communicate with myself. And I would write to God. I would write to spirit. And so I really found myself in my writing. And I knew when I was going to be older that I wanted to speak. I would literally, while I was taking a shower or taking a bath after school, be reciting speeches that I would make up in my head while doing that. So it was just kind of, I knew I was going to be a speaker and writer, but I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know when it was going to happen or how it was going to take place, but I knew that that's where I wanted to head on my path. But I took the traditional path. I went to college. I got a degree in something that I didn't want to do. And I kept getting degrees in things that I really didn't want to do, because that's what I felt like. You feel like you have to go get a job, and you've got to pay the bills, and you've got to be stuck in the cycle of employment. And I realized very quickly after getting out of college and being in an 8-to-5 job that wasn't for me. Like, I'm a free spirit. I need to do my own thing. I need to have flexible hours. I'm a creative person. And I quit my last 8-to-5 job in 2008 when that year my first book was published. And I really began my speaking journey then. I had done speaking before that, but it wasn't for work. It wasn't paid. And so after my first book was published, I started putting myself out there. I went through a life coaching program and started my career, and have since written another book, and I've got another one being released in January, and have just been on this journey of learning how to craft stories on stage, and it has kind of just become my thing. I've found, living in Mississippi and being a gay woman, like I mentioned earlier, it has been a really big proponent of why I feel I've come to love myself and accept myself in a climate that previously has not loved and accepted me. And it was storytelling and sharing my experiences with others, and the truth and the vulnerability nature behind what I was saying to people that really opened doors for hard conversations and communication and understanding, and kind of like bridging the gap between how we view the world. Storytelling has been the thing that has helped me heal and helped me really relate to people in a way that has made me feel safe in my community now. So it's something that has been a huge part of my healing journey. And now it gets to be a part of what I do for work, is I actually help speakers tell stories on stage, and I help them craft their stories into a way that's super meaningful and makes sense for the audience, and also makes sense for the person who's telling the story. So I absolutely love storytelling. I love reading a person's story and helping them craft it in a way that's going to be really powerful. So it's just been an evolution of who I am deep down over a period of time. That's been a very healing, powerful thing for me.
So in the same way you're helping people today craft their story, looking back to when you were starting your journey as a story writer and creator, was there somebody back in your high school days that you modeled or you looked up to or mentored you in that way? Or were you kind of finding this path on your own?
In a lot of ways, I've found it on my own. Just this need to voice my emotions and need to voice who I am. I kind of found a way that worked for me that allowed me to feel free within myself. But I also had some really great English teachers in high school. And I remember the creative writing class I took. I absolutely loved that class. And then I had a great English teacher in high school who I'm still connected to, and we still see each other here in Mississippi, in my hometown. And they were so encouraging of my writing and said, you need to be a writer, you need to be a writer, you need to be a writer. So they made me love writing in a way that made me want to keep doing it. So, I wrote all through college, but I never went to school for writing.
Well, and all those other degrees kind of fed your learning, I guess, and your creativity as far as getting in the learning space and growing as a person. But it's interesting how you've kind of moved away from some of those degrees into your passion and who you are as a person. That's great.
Yeah, I wish I had, maybe majored in English or, some kind of form of writing path, but I definitely didn't take that route. I remember, I was telling my parents that I wanted to be a writer, and they're like, well, you got to do something for money. And so that's when I made that decision, like, okay, I'll go get a degree in psychology instead, because obviously writing's not going to pay the bills.
That's interesting. I'm kind of wondering if you had gone down the path of studying writing and all that, if that would have changed your style of who you are today. If you were educated in writing, right? Yeah, it might be a totally different path for you.
It's totally possible. Yeah. Yeah, I may have, yeah, who knows what that would have done. Because I'm a perfectionist at nature. So I have to really hone in on that when I'm doing a project or working on something. And so I may have overthought what I was writing instead of just writing from my heart, which is, when I started my career, it was just writing from my heart.
So for somebody that's new to speaking or interested in speaking on stage, I know I've spoken on stage before, and there's the nerves, the butterflies. You want to present yourself the best way possible. And is there anything that you kind of use as your little secret superpower that helps you to convey a message and a story in a way that connects with an audience?
Preparation. That's the key. And it's hours and hours and hours and hours of work. If you want to tell a good story and craft it in a way where you totally embody it as the person who's presenting, you have to practice. You have to first craft that story, and you've got to practice it over and over and over and over and over to the point where you have memorized it. And beyond memorization is embodiment, to a point where you actually embody it and you can bring the emotions with the story. So a lot of people think it's just writing a good story. It's not. It's all the prep work. It's the hours of work before you get on stage that you have to do to get up there and actually convey the story in a powerful way.
Are there some misconceptions for people who are new to speaking like this, where they might have some assumptions on what good looks like, where you've kind of had to deconstruct that and help them rethink how they present themselves on stage?
Yeah, I mean, the people I work with are pretty motivated people. They're already thought leaders or they're already executives. So I think on some level they understand, but that it takes a good bit of work. But I think for new speakers, what I've seen, because I'm working with some new authors right now who want to start speaking and speaking about their book and, promoting it, is that they think they can just go off the cuff, have an outline and go off the cuff. And while that's okay, if you really want to be a good speaker and you really want to be captivating and hold your audience's attention, you have to script out what you're going to say and understand your content to the fullest and really, put in the time to memorize and prepare and go over it and over and over it and listen to yourself and see where you can do better. Off the cuff is a certain kind of, like if you've been speaking for 30 or 40 years for a long time and you're really good at your craft, that's different for that kind of person. But for someone who's just starting out, the preparation piece is the most important thing to focus on, and just making sure your content is solid.
And so the power of your story is, I love the idea that your story is your story. No one can tell it like you can. No one can embody it like you can. And so that's kind of again, go back to it again, the superpower that you have as a storyteller. Let's dive in a little bit about your story, because I find it fascinating, and I think that it can help and encourage many people that are listening to the podcast today. Can you tell me a little bit about your story? I know you were on a podcast recently. You were talking about being in school for athletics, and you came to a point where you found out who you are as a person, and the reaction of the people around you wasn't as supportive as you had hoped it would be, possibly. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think that's powerful.
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't supportive at all. It was, I was very involved with the spiritual community at Mississippi State, and I was a two-sport athlete. I played softball and basketball, and I figured out I was gay in my senior year of playing, and I kept it a secret for a year. And then my ex-boyfriend found out about it, and word started getting out. And before I knew it, there was this full day of people calling me a hypocrite, telling me I'm going to hell, sitting me down in the chapel on campus and just reciting Bible verses. And just the person, they didn't see me as a person anymore. They just saw me as like, hey, you're gay, and we can't support that. Therefore, we can't support you. We can't hold you in this space. We can't help you through this in this direction. And so I was left kind of on my own accord to figure things out, because I think even in the same day, I went and told my family that I was gay, which was a big shock for them because I had dated guys in the past and I had kept it hidden pretty well. And they had a really hard time with it and weren't able to be that support that I needed either, because they had their own process. And so it kind of took me on this path of really finding a way to love myself without any full-on support of any one person. And so it was kind of a lonely journey. I turned to my spirituality and I left Mississippi, and was able to be myself right off the bat in these, when I would start a new life at Florida State. And then I went on to Miami, and then I went on to Colorado, and I was able to put myself into situations, into safe spaces with people where I knew I was going to be accepted, and was able to work on myself with my time away in Mississippi until eventually getting to a point where I realized in 2010 that I needed to come back home to heal my experience from a place of confidence. And so it's been, the last 12 years have really been about me loving myself more and more and more and more along this journey of being in a culture that has been a little bit more behind than the rest of the country as far as accepting of gay rights and accepting of gay people. So, I think the storytelling piece for me, and, I would have mentioned this too earlier when we were talking about being a speaker, is just the vulnerability piece and being very open and honest with people, being willing to be seen. I think the most healing thing for me in my journey has been sharing my real story and my real experiences and my real emotions around being rejected from my spiritual community or rejected from certain people or things that were said to me and how it made me feel. And so my focus as a storyteller is always on that vulnerability, that authentic piece of whatever it is I'm saying, because that's what people connect to in any audience. They want to know your heart. They want to know the conflict that's going inside of you. They want to know what your fears are. They want to know how you transform. They want to know how your perception shifts. They want to know how you move forward. And so focusing on those things as a storyteller also helps you in your life, in dealing with conflict and dealing with challenges. So they really, my healing journey and the storytelling piece, they all really go hand in hand, and one has helped the other kind of form itself and vice versa.
It's an amazing story. And I think we talked before as well that in our home, we've had a similar thing happen with our daughter. And we come from a Christian background as well. And I think when she came to talk to us for that first time, she came prepared for pushback or rejection, but that's not how we responded. And it kind of took her back a little bit because she was locked and loaded, that she had all of her statistics and all of her facts, and she had prepared herself for what could be, right? Did you feel prepared when this happened, when this happened for you? Did you anticipate pushback, or did you anticipate, were you caught off guard by the response of people around you? Because I'm curious from your perspective and how I can relate that to our home as well.
Well, good for you guys. I thank you for sharing that. For me, I think I was prepared. I knew how people felt about gay relationships, and I knew how my family felt about gay relationships. And so that's why it was so scary for me for anyone to find out. I didn't want anyone to find out. I didn't want my family to know, but I had to tell my family, because if I didn't tell them, it would have gotten to them eventually. Small town, Mississippi. So I knew it wasn't going to be good. I was prepared for that, but it didn't make it any easier by any means.
Yeah, because I know my daughter was preparing, like she had in her mind her last Christmas before she tells us. She has her last birthday, her last Father's Day, and you can see her counting down, and the anxiety level of her having to experience things for the last time, anticipating, not knowing how we're going to react to this as her parents, that she's just building this up as like, I'm going to experience all these things, but she was retreating at the same time. And we didn't really know what was going on. And I feel bad because I think things would have been better if she had known that she wouldn't have been. She had her bag packed, the whole thing, right? And I'm like, my gosh, no, that's not how things are here. You know, yeah, it's not something that we had thought about as parents, but at the same time, you're our daughter, and this is your home, and the door's never locked for you ever. So let's just get past that right away and realize that no matter how we're all feeling in the moment. And I just remember as a dad sitting there thinking, be careful with your words right now, because this is a moment that will never, ever be repeated in this moment. And what you say matters. And, you know, I remember just sitting in silence, just like trying to figure out what I could do to make this easier for her and better for her and comfort her so that she knew she had an ally on her side. And that's kind of my approach as a dad. And I just wish that people were a little bit more thoughtful of the person who is like coming to them. And we told Hadley, our daughter, that it's not about her coming out to us. It's about her letting us in, because her letting us in was more of, she controlled the narrative in that sense, where we had we were coming to her and she wasn't coming to us. So we flipped it back to her. And that really helped kind of build that bridge. And, you know, that's where we're at right now. And we love our daughter and she is everything to us. Yes. So I think that's a connection and a bond that needs to be reinforced no matter what you believe in life and what you think is the truth. There's 2 people, 3 people. There's a group of people in this conversation, and we really need to think of each other and care for each other more. I think that's kind of my take on it. Yeah. So
that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Did she ever share with you why she was so afraid or so scared? Or was it just because of what she had heard, you know, just culturally, or was it, you know, the religion, or why was she so scared?
I think the religious side of it really did scare her. And I think that because like grandparents and things like that, she would think that, well, I'm not going to have a relationship anymore. I think she was afraid of broken relationships and what that would mean to her in the long term. So by building that up and giving her strength, I think we've been able to help alleviate some of those fears. It's still ongoing, but it's a conversation that's not ending, which is I like.
Yeah. Well, I applaud you for, you know, I mean, I think that's what any gay child would want, is for their parents to just keep the conversation going and to continue to stay open and be there, because it is, as the person who might be LGBTQ, you know, you're already hearing so many things in the outside world of why you're not worthy enough or you're not good enough. And so you're battling those, and, you know, and you play your fears up in a way that are very real. But they can get out of hand for sure. You know, I think the message I tell myself all the time is, you know, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of all of these amazing things happening in my life or whatever's going on. And I have to work through those constantly because of the trauma associated with what happened when I did come out, or the fears that built up, or the fears that I still have. I mean, there's always that kind of underneath the surface level of fear that I think is always existing within me and within us, that we have to kind of be cautious around others, or we won't be seen for who we really are beyond our label or whatever it may be. So, you know, I know my parents have worked extremely hard. They had a hard time with it initially, and we had some rough years, but we all went into counseling. And when I moved back to Mississippi, we had those hard conversations and we really worked through our things. And my parents have been warriors in the sense that they have grown and been willing to grow as human beings because of the experience with me. And I mean, they've had to look at everything in their life and question it, and how they were raised and what they were taught. And I respect them so much for the work they've done. and how they've showed up for me and been present for me and been happy for the life I have now and all the things that have happened over the years. So I'm really grateful, to have parents like that. I know your daughter is probably so grateful to have parents like you, because there's so many kids that don't get that opportunity to have a loving presence in their life that will work hard to make us feel loved.
It's amazing. So as we take these things from our life, these experiences, the things that we've learned, the fears, all of the things that make us who we are, and we're using that to craft our story. What I'm wondering is, how much of it do we tailor to our audience? Do we have different stories for different audiences? Do we go down different paths? But how deep do we go in our personal story to be effective to an audience? Is there kind of a guideline? Because what I don't want to do is get up on stage and say, well, I was born at a very young age, and go too deep and people are lost in our story. How do we take the elements of our story that are applicable and create that for the audience that are in front of us so it's meaningful for them?
I think the best thing to do is to pull stories out of your story and take so I can tell the story about, going back and speaking at Mississippi State at National Coming Out Day. That's one specific story within my overall broad story. And if you can take a specific context and a specific challenge that you face and work all the way through and complete that story and thread your stories together with concepts or thoughts or, if you hear a really good TED Talk, people thread things really, really well together. So that's often the most powerful because it keeps people engaged, but it also gives you an opportunity to dive deep into how you got through something tough. So that's what I teach people to do, is to thread your stories together, but make each story meaningful and make sure they all connect to one another within the message that you're actually conveying to the audience. And it doesn't matter who your audience is. The content has to mean something to you. And if it means something to you, then it's going to mean something to your audience members because they're going to feel that. And so that's kind of how I work with people in the storytelling space, is just breaking your stories down, because a really well told story doesn't have to be a long drawn out story. It can be 2 or 3 paragraphs and be a really powerful story. So it's just breaking down those elements and making sure that you've got the full picture. You go from context, conflict, vulnerability, authenticity, transformation, resolution, and then new perspective. It's actually on my website. If you go to my website, I have my storytelling method that I teach people how to use it. I give an example. It's free content. So I do that because I want people to be able to work through the process of telling a good story for themselves. And I'll also tell people, don't get on stage and tell a story that you can't handle any reaction to. If someone were to say something really negative about that story, are you going to be okay? And you have to come from a place where you're going to be okay with the outcome. And so if you're not quite ready to share that deep, dark secret that you've never told anyone on stage, think twice about it, because you may not be ready to handle what may come of it. So I think it's important to work through your stories first and make sure you're comfortable before getting on stage, and come from a healed place, rather than from a place of, looking for acceptance, if that makes sense.
So I know, in the comedy space, for example, a comedian who's wanting to write up new material will write stuff and then go to some little comedy place and practice before they present it to their community. Is there a way for people to practice their story, whether in front of an audience or on their own? What is your advice for somebody learning how to present themselves and what they feel like and look like on stage? Is there some tips for that too?
Yeah, all the speakers I work with, I say, go to your safe friends, go to the people that really love you and accept you and know you, and share it with them and get their feedback, because you have their acceptance, you have their love. And sometimes they're the hardest to tell your story to, so you're kind of getting the hard ones out of the way. But it's, go to the people that you're safe with. And if you don't have those people, then, there's always counselors or coaches or therapists. And if you don't have those people, then you've got a notebook and you've got a video camera. So, there's a way for everybody to get the feedback they need before you go and tell the world something, unless you just are really okay with, feedback from TikTok or whatever it may be. But, yeah, that's what I say for, write out your story, make sure you're comfortable with the story, go share it within a safe space, see how that feels, share yourself on camera, play it back, listen to yourself, watch yourself. Really, really get into the energy of it. Don't be afraid of listening to yourself and hearing what you have to say. So those are 3 great ways to start.
So when I talk to great people like you, by the way, there's this question I always wonder is if we could have a sneak peek into your toolbox, things that work for you, things that you pull out, tools that just seem to help, either for you personally or for helping other people. Are there tools that help people who are speaking to progress and increase and be better? Is there certain things that you really seem to gravitate towards?
I would say one of the things that's worked well with me and a lot of my clients in the preparation space when you're getting ready for a speaking engagement is going for walks and speaking out loud. But I also do that in a personal space as well. Like when I have something I'm trying to work through, I like to go on long walks and think about it and talk it out loud to myself. And the same thing when I'm preparing for a speech, I like to go for long walks and talk it out and hear myself say it out loud over and over and over. Just the repetition is super helpful. So for me, it's kind of a similar tool, whether I'm dealing with something kind of conflict or change that's going on in my life, or when I'm preparing for a speech, I handle them very similarly. I don't know if that's what you were looking for or not, but I think, yeah, that's one thing. And then the other day I was on a podcast with someone in New Zealand and we were talking about something similar, and I have always tried to feel my feelings as they come up. Like when I'm hurt or when I'm sad or whatever, is just really accept whatever's going on for me so that I can see clearer. And I think our lives are so fast paced that we forget to pause and take those moments. And it's harder for me now that I'm a mom of a almost 4-year-old to have those pauses. So I have to be very intentional about them, because if I'm not careful, life can get away from me and I'm not processing what's going on, then it's going to catch up and I'm going to see it in my reactions to what's going on, when things do happen. So that's a tool that I like to use because it helps me stay present for my real life and it helps me stay present when I'm on stage.
Okay. Yeah. The other thing I'm hearing too is that we write differently than we speak. So if I'm sit down and write out my thoughts, I'm going to use proper grammar. I'm going to frame my sentences a certain way. But when I speak,
right,
I might not have the same filters. So my speaking language sounds different than my written language. Is there a way to kind of blend those two? You talk about developing and memorizing your story. How do I present myself without sounding like I'm reading to you?
That's a really good question. And that is a tough one. And again, I would say my same answer is really preparation. And when people first start scripting, I said, just write it out. No grammar, no nothing. Just write the whole thing out and don't worry about it. And then I go in and I teach them how to edit it down. And when you're going on stage, so like writing a book and speaking a speech are 2 very different forms of writing. When you're speaking on stage, you want to be direct, you want to be the expert, you want to be clear, and you need short sentences, then you need powerful sentences. When you're, writing a book, you want all the details, you want it to be fluffy, you want people to be encapsulated by the imagery. But when you're on stage, you want people to be encapsulated in the emotion you're bringing to the stage. And so again, it's all about preparation. It's all about being comfortable with your material and being willing to be seen, letting people see who you are, and just open your heart and open up to the possibility of how you could change someone's life with whatever you're saying. So there's an openness there that you have to be okay with screwing up and not saying the right thing. There's a whole sense of surrender and letting go and speaking that you have to allow yourself to just be yourself instead of sounding scripted. There's a whole process.
Yeah, because when you're writing, you have to create the world. You have to give them information to build a world. for the reader. But when you're speaking on stage, you can do an eye roll, you can use your hands, you can do little movements, which you can't do in a written sense, right? So you have some other tools that you can use all those tools in a different way. So yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So talk a little bit about the books as well. Like, I'm really interested. You say the third book is coming. Is that right?
Yes, in January. It'll launch in January. The first one, my first book is called Creating Your Heaven on Earth. And my second one's called Courage, Agreeing to Disagree is Not Enough. And then this one is a memoir. It's called Held and Free, and it's coming out of your story. And it's kind of an homage to storytelling and the power of vulnerable storytelling and how it's kind of molded me as a human being and helped me in my process of healing. And so, yeah, it's been a hard one to write because it's a lot of personal stories, and I've had to dig really deep, which is what I wanted to do. I really wanted to dig deeper than I ever have in my writing, and this book has definitely forced me to do that in a way that has been very powerful and very hard, very challenging. But I'm excited about it because I've never written something like this before. It's very different than my other two books.
And so your audience for these books then, who are you writing to?
Anyone who is interested in self-growth, who is interested in spirituality on some level, any kind of spirituality, and people who want to love who they are, want to go on that journey of self-love and want to get to a place of peace and understanding and calmness in their life and wholeness.
Amazing. I love it. So do the three books kind of feed each other, or are they separate?
Yeah, I mean, the first two books have short stories, essays in it. This third book is, a fully fleshed out story, which was really challenging for me as a speaker. But yeah, I mean, they all feed each other. They're all me.
What's the connection between having a book and speaking on stage? Would you advise authors to pursue that if they feel they can do this, and maybe they don't feel they can do this? They're shy or quiet, introverted. How do we get an author from behind the book out in front of people? I'm interested to see your perspective on that.
Well, I think it just depends on what the person wants. Like, if you want exposure and you want to sell more books, speaking is the best way to do it. I mean, I know social media can do great things, but when you're actually in front of people and you're able to connect personally with people and share yourself on stage or in front of a room, there's no better way to promote your work than that. So I work with a lot of new authors, and they all want to learn how to speak. I mean, everybody wants the opportunity to promote their book because, I mean, our books are our babies, right? They're super important to us, but it's, it can be hard for us more introverted people. I'm actually an introvert, but I think it's a necessary thing for self-promotion and really getting your work out there and your messages out there. So go for it. Do it.
What is it? Just give us a sense of what it feels like to work with you. If I come to you as an author, how can you help me to share my story better?
I really just accept people where they are and can work with people from any point. And I've worked with some of the best, and I've worked with beginners. It's important to me that my clients know that I 1,000,000% believe in them and that I'm behind them, and I'm going to be there to support them every step of the way, especially through the preparation memorization phase, which is really, really tough for people. I am their cheerleader. Like, I'm going to push you. I'm going to want you to work hard. I'm going to motivate you, and I'm going to help you get the result you really, really want. So I am 1,000,000% present with my clients, and I'm there for them.
So somebody listening to this podcast today, maybe they're going to be doing their first story on stage coming up. Mm-hmm. You're off to the side of the stage, excited and cheering for them. What would you say to them before they head out to grab the microphone? What's your word of wisdom to them?
Oh, wow. I've never been asked this question. Yeah, I would just say, you've got this. You know this. You've got this. It's time to just drop the script and go out there and be yourself. Just go. You've got this. You've got this material.
Wow. That's pretty powerful, right? I love that. I love it. So let's talk website. Let's talk connections. How do people get a little bit more of you in their life, what can we do?
My website hosts everything. So meaganonan.com. And I've got all my social media links, my books, speaking engagements, programs, everything that I do is on my website. So that's probably the best place to link up with me.
And the free tips are there and free instruction as well. I love that you offer that. I love having you on the podcast, Meagan, and for you to share your journey with us as well, like to connect with you personally and hear your story and how I can relate your story to my family. I thank you for that. I wish things were easier for you back in the day as you kind of live this journey in front of your peers and your family. I'm happy to hear things are getting better. And I love the fact that you're using the power of your story to help other people craft theirs. So to be part of your world and to have you today I feel it's an honor to speak to you. So thank you.
Likewise. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for all the great questions.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, see? Now I feel so happy. So it's great. So if you want to develop your skills on stage, you need somebody who has your back, who will be standing off to the corner on stage and pushing you forward. Meagan's here for you. So please reach out and contact her. And again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. So you're ready to go out on stage. You're ready to grab the mic and tell your story. Do you really want to do this alone? Do you really want to go out there by yourself? Maybe you have it. Maybe you need help. So Meagan is here for you. Reach out to Meagan. Let her know you heard her on the podcast. I love having her on today. It was really great. And for those that are struggling and you are struggling with who you are in life and you looking for encouragement, I hope that something that we've shared in the podcast helps you and helps you to find your path in life. And you know who you are. And if you need help, reach out, ask for help, seek people that have your back and love you, who will take you from unacceptance and darkness and will give you light and life. And someone like Meagan is the one you can reach out to. And again, really happy to have her on the podcast. Thank you for listening. And again, go over and check out all her stuff on social media. And what I really like that takeaway is that visual of Meagan in the corners, off stage, encouraging you in life to tell your story. You have a story. Everyone has a story. Your story can help somebody. Meagan's story helps us. And my story, I hope, can help you. Thank you for being part of the story. Let's keep this story going. Living the next chapter. Thank you. Hey guys, thank you for listening to the podcast. Jump over to livingthenextchapter.com, our website, and you will see a spot where you can leave a voice message. We'd love to hear your feedback. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to hear from you. So if you want your voice on this podcast, yes, that's possible. Go to livingthenextchapter.com, click the little microphone icon, leave a voice message. We'll insert your message into the podcast. Tell us where you're listening from. Tell us your favorite guest. Maybe there's a guest we should have on the podcast. Maybe you should be our next guest. Leave us a message at livingthenextchapter.com. Again, thank you so much for listening. Please share this podcast episode with one person. That's all we're asking. Meet you over there at livingthenextchapter.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Love to hear from you. Till the next episode. It's coming up right away. Be sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you for being part of Living the Next Chapter. Thank you for supporting our guests. Have a great day.